Okay, good afternoon. This is Matt Logston with Cohesive Information Solutions. Today we're going to be providing an overview of IBM's Maximo Asset Management, the latest version, Maximo 7.6. This session will be recorded, so we're going to go ahead and get started on time. For those that join late, they can always come back and replay it. We'll be posting the recorded video as well as this PowerPoint that I've got here. We'll be recording, putting that up on our website for you to pull down at your leisure. So today, December the 12th, IBM released Maximo 7.6. And today I've got PowerPoints, but I'm going to focus more on actually getting into the product. I like to show the product like I would like it to be seen if I were on the receiving end. So, and that's not necessarily in a bunch of PowerPoints, but actually getting into the product. So Cohesive has been participating in IBM's beta for some time now, and what I'm showing here is actually a beta copy because the software just went up on Passport Advantage today, and so this was the earliest opportunity to actually pull the official version down, and you can now go ahead and do that if you're under a current maintenance agreement. So just a little bit of history here. So back in 2008, 7.1 was released. 3 years later, the current version, Maximo 7.5, was released in April of 2011. And then again, 3 years from that point, then Maximo 7.6 was released. And today was actually the release date, as I said earlier. And as a reminder, 7.1 will reach its end of support this coming April 30th of 2015. So you can still get maintenance on it, but all engineering changes and updates to the product, will not be, no updates will be done to the product or fix packs. That'll all be done in more recent versions. Okay, so on the 9th of December, IBM released this announcement letter. As you roll over this, when I get the presentation, you'll actually be able to pull down the announcement letter if you haven't seen it, and it's got some useful references, an overview, a description, different information about Maximo 7.6. So I wanted to give you a link to the actual announcement letter. Also, this morning we went up on Passport Advantage as well as Partner World, since Cohesive's a premier IBM business partner. We don't pull it down from Passport Advantage. We get the product off of Partner World. But out on the customer-facing site, Passport Advantage, you'll see here Maximo version 7.6 is available, and the different files and documentations that are there to download with it. So what IBM announced today was not just Maximo Asset Management 7.6, but also Maximo for Service Provider 7.6. In addition to that, there is an interim features release of the Maximo Industry Solutions and all of the Maximo add-on products, in that the most current version of Maximo 7.5 will be supported as compatible with IBM's Maximo 7.6. So the look and feel that you'll see in 7.6 will apply to your industry solutions such as Maximo Nuclear, Maximo Life Sciences, Transportation, Oil and Gas, Utilities will all have the same look and feel as 7.6. Additionally, all the upgrade scripts to take you from a current version of Maximo that you're on to 7.6 also shipping today as well, and is available today. Okay, so I have broken this. I've taken all that IBM has shown us and all of our experience in looking at Maximo 7.6, and I've kind of boiled it down in 2 summary slides and in 5 major areas: user interface changes, functionality changes, the reporting and KPIs, technical enhancements, and licensing. Following this, in this deck, you're going to see slides that kind of came from the IBM deck that will give you more detail, but I thought rather than go through that slide by slide, I'd actually get into the product and show you those. All right, so without further ado, I will switch over to and log into Maximo here. So this is what the new Start Center looks like. So I'll go ahead and collapse the left-hand navigation for now. We'll get to that in a minute. But the fairly similar Start Center, you'll see the theme and the color, the look and feel, if you will, is a little different. IBM will say that they've modernized it to enhance the user's experience. They've taken a lot of the gray out and a lot of the heaviness of the other screens and made them a bit easier to not only navigate, but also view. So what they've tried to do is to make the content stand out as opposed to the form screen stand out. So we'll get into some differences on the Start Center here in a minute, but when you'll see by default now your go-to menu is over here on the left-hand side, and when you go into an application, then if you want to go back home to the Start Center, now they've got this little house over here, so you can go home, returns you back to your Start Center. All of the icons along the top, the logged in user is here, bulletins, reports, profile information, sign out, and then help across the top. So not as much text and more icon based, if you will. And also the configuring the Start Center now, you used to have the text like change layout and content, so now those are all based on icons and not as rich in text, if you will. So by hovering you see the text, but it doesn't take up it doesn't clutter the screen with text that you don't really need all the time. Favorite applications and the kind of components you can put in the Start Center are pretty much the same. We will talk in a minute about multiple objects you can now put on a result set inside of a Start Center portlet. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the screen changes. So if I go to, and I'll just go to Assets for a minute. Before I do that, I'm going to tell you this, that any of the look and feel that you see in the new Maximo can be changed back to the old way if you prefer. So if you're doing a fresh install of Maximo 7.6, by default, you will see the new look and feel. But if, for example, you're using an existing skin like Tivoli 09 on your Maximo, say 7.5 system, and when you upgrade, those upgrade scripts, from what we understand, will obey your previous settings and not automatically force you into this new look and feel. So you'd be able to turn those on at a time that's right for you as your users adopt to the new user interface, should that be your desire to let them do that. So let's go ahead into an application. I'll just go into, say, Assets and show you kind of the difference inside of an application. Now, one of the first things you realize is that when I go to this List tab, I don't see all the other tabs, right? I just simply see a list, a place that I can do a List tab, and that pretty much works the same way as it has before, with one exception that we came across that really wasn't, I hadn't seen anybody at IBM really publicize, but just a simple one click right here will return all the records, right? So used to be you'd have to go up here and hit a return, but just by clicking on that blue section, you'd be able to pull down the all records. All right, so if I go ahead into one of the into a record, say within an application like Assets, one of the things you'll see is that by default the labels are above the data fields. Right now, the other thing is IBM has taken out a lot of the white space between these sections within the form of an application. Before, they would really expand that to the full extent of the browser and stretch it all the way across. And that created a lot of need for some horizontal scrolling. What they've done is basically tried to compress that to the left as much as possible. Again, these are all preferences that you can put in place. But one of the reasons for that, compressing stuff to the left, is it will help more on mobile devices and fitting stuff into a smaller space. If when you get into something like Maximo Every Place, and you're looking at Maximo, say, on an iPhone or an iPad. The other thing is that the labeling above the field not only allows you to not stretch as much to the right, but also when, IBM's got to be concerned about multiple languages, and when you convert things to other languages like German, some of those translations get pretty long and would shove stuff further to the right. So by putting it on top, you find less movement in the actual data fields that people are working on. So a new look and feel to Maximo, again, totally configurable. The new skin is called Tivoli 13, and there is absolutely a system property that I can show you where you change that if you want to go back and revert back to the existing look and feel. So the other thing I want to do is to talk about left-hand navigation. So before, you'll remember that go-to and your start center return was up in the upper right-hand corner. Now what they've done is they've moved those over here, like I say, but also, let's go back to the start center. By default, they'll show you the go-to menu down the left side of the screen. Okay. As I said earlier, you can collapse that and put it back. You can collapse it, bring it back. But the other thing is up here under default information, right? So when it says side navigation menu, I can choose to either display it, hide it if I don't want it or don't like it, and but my choice is to say, hey, whatever that security group gets is what I want to use. And that's the way this is set up today. Okay. Now, one of the things that I thought was really sweet about this new interface, as I looked at it, is this ability to do this fine navigation up here, this search box. So you might forget where, like, job plans were, right? So if you just type in job plans, it'll take you right to it. If you want to find everything that's got the word asset in it, every application, or when you get into an application, all of the select actions or even saved queries that you have the rights to see, they are all searchable, and you can just find them and then navigate directly from there, which is I found the more I've used this, the more I like that feature alone. Now, when you revert back to something other than the left-hand navigation, that feature, regrettably, isn't there. Perhaps in future releases we'll see that the ability to search and find things like this, but to me, I find it very helpful. So if I wanted to go to Application Designer, it was just really quite easy to do that. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go to some of the things on the Start Center. So on this Start Center, you can see I have a result set of work orders, and one of the things I've done here, besides showing the location and the asset, is I went out to the asset table and I was able to pull the asset manufacturer and the asset vendor, right? So those don't sit in the work order table, but by reference now I can get to those. And the way you do that is, and by the way, these buttons now are only visible when you roll over them, so that again reduces clutter. So if I wanted to add, for example, serial number, which isn't in the work order table, but I wanted to add it right next to asset here, I'd be able to simply go edit the portlet. They actually, I think, stole from the ad hoc reporting, because this is very much like this. So if I go to asset, I type in serial number, I pick it, and then I add selected. I put it down here at the end of the list, and I'll just put it in position 6 and say finish. And then that easy, I was able to add right here the asset serial number to this table window, which is primarily pulling from the work order. So you can get multiple objects within a result set on a start center, which could be handy. Okay, kind of going down, the next thing I'd like to show really would be, I'll go into show this through work order tracking. It'll be these hover dialogues, and I'll just click here to return a list, and what you'll see is here we've put it on assets, so you'll see the little I next to assets. If the work order has an asset, it'll have a little I next to it, and what that gives you the ability to do is when you roll over it, it'll actually pull up information that you want a user to see about that without having to go to the asset and pull that up and then return with value. It'll basically allow you to expose information about that. And that is not only done on the list tabs, but if you go into the an element here, like this work order, and maybe supervisor down here. See if supervisor's on here. Yeah, so supervisor, and you wanted to be able to give that person a call or email them, you'd be able to pull that up without going and jumping over through this typical go-to and fetching it over there, but be able to display that not only on the list tabs, but also on within the application itself. Okay. The other thing that you'll see here in this scenario is that these detail menus, you can always pull these down, but now they have something that's called an inline icon, and you can have up to 3. They can be at the end of a field like this, or they could be out past the description. But what this allows you to do is to take these menu items that are down below and basically expose them. So if, for example, in your world, people pick things by the classification, just then by one click you can get right to the classification, or if you wanted to open a drill down, right, with one click you'd be able to do that as well. So these are called inline icons, and there are some restrictions. So for example, I think if you're using condition monitoring and other things to resolve a field, then I believe there's some restrictions around there where inline icons can't be used, but that's all in the documentation. Okay. There's also now a new approach to breadcrumbs. So breadcrumbs, by default, before were shown along the bottom of the screen. So now, for example, if I went to, I'm in work order tracking, as you can see along the top. If I drilled on into, say, assets, and then maybe from assets went to locations, right? So what you're seeing is the breadcrumbs along the top here. So if I wanted to return just one level, I could click assets. If I wanted to go all the way back to work order tracking, I could simply click up there. So they've moved where those breadcrumbs are. Okay. So there's a lot more that I could tell you, I think, on the user interface, but in the interest of time, I think we should keep going. You will see a new icon up here, which is called Edit. And let me show you what that's about. So in the past, the way Maximo worked is kind of the last person that saved the record won. And if 2 people were in a record editing it and someone saved it, the other person, upon saving, might have a refetch error or be asked to refetch the record. And so what IBM has done is, I'll just go back to my Start Center. I'll show you how this is invoked. Is in Application Designer, I went ahead and turned it on for WoTrack. And you'll see this button here, Edit Mode Enabled. So I click that. And when I click that, when I got into work orders now, I'm now going to get, once I pull up a work order, right? By default, it's going to be in read-only mode, so every field is kind of grayed out. So if I want edit rights to this, I can click edit. It opens the field up. Now if I log in as another user and I go to work orders and I pull up that same work order, you can see in the list tab it actually has a little pencil next to it that shows me, and if I hover over it, it says Matt Logston is currently editing the record. Now, the record's released when I save it, or when I go back to the list tab, or even when my session times out. It'll release the record. Also, there's administrators can release them at any time. But kind of a nice feature, certainly optional, but it's something that's there for you. So if I go out and I now get out of the record, I was in the wrong field there. Now when I went back to the other user, that edit has gone away, and now this user has the right to go edit the field. So, so improve record locking via this edit mode feature. So in general, I'd like to say this, that as I've seen, I've been around Maximo since about the early versions of 4, and when the IBM comes up with releases, sometimes they're technology releases, and other times they're more functional in nature, and other times they're more focused on usability. And I think with this release, they've kind of struck a nice chord of all of those things. And one of the things that they've done is to include a service address with Maximo. So this was part of what was included with Scheduler and perhaps other products, but now it's part of Core. So I'd like to show you a little bit about that. So we'll go back to the Start Center. So what you'll find is under, I'll show you where it's at so you know, under Administration, you'll see something now that's called Map Manager. And what this basically does is it opens up APIs for both Bing and Google, and you can also use your own ArcGIS. If you have an internal GIS system, you can use those maps. So I put 2 maps out here. I've enabled one, which is Google. Fairly simple to set up. Okay. There's map tips, so that as you want to say you hover over a work order on the map, it'll show you what you want to display, so that's all configurable. But here's the way this works, right? So once the map is kind of there and set up, you go out and create a service address. And I put one out here for the Atlanta Braves, put it on the stadium. And so if I go to the map tab now, what you'll see is actually Google Maps. I'll fit the screen. Again, this is all in Maximo, right? And so now I can zoom in. I can even turn on the satellite. And do all the things that you would normally be able to do inside of Google with, say, that address. See, I'm going to make sure the timing's okay. Is it, everybody seeing that okay? I'm going to assume yes. So I'll just go ahead and back out of that. So for those of you that have assets spread across a large geography, this could be a pretty easy way to involve maps into your business process. So now that I have a service address on a map, or a map location to a service address, now I can begin to do some things with that, like put in, if I go to Assets, and I pull up like Turner Stadium, Turner Field. It's the home of the Braves. Now when I hit this map, first off, I've got that service address tied to this asset. So now when I go to the map inherits the address, and I can see the stadium as well. And the same thing is if I go to work orders, and I look at all work orders that are on Turner Field, the work orders also inherit that. When I go to the map now, you see a little different icon. If you click on it, now you can get different things. In this case, we got to fix the scoreboard. It gives me the address, the status of the work order, and then I can get more information here both on the work order and on the assets, as well as things like open the drill down, all from the map. So that's one of the functional enhancements that they've done. They've also included crew and crew types. So I went ahead and put those on my Start Center, but those are some new capabilities to assign work, not just to an individual, but you might have, say for a utility, you might have a pole setting crew. It exists of 4 people of different crafts, you know, maybe a driver, a bucket operator, and so on. So you'd be able to put those crew types and crews together and then schedule individuals as crews. This really came out of the Maximo for utilities, but now it's part of the base Maximo. Okay. Okay, so the other thing that I'll say is that the log tab has been added to quick reporting as well as PRs and POs. So if we go into, say, purchase orders and pull up the purchase order, you're going to see a log tab there. You're going to see it not only on quick reporting, but also on purchase requisition. So they've added that there. There's also been some improved handling of labor transactions and the recording of labor transactions across time zones. So although I wasn't aware of it, apparently there were some issues with labor transactions across time zones, and I've not looked into that in detail, but it's my understanding there's been some improvements in the handling of that. So, so we've gone through some of the enhancements on the user interface, Start Center, some of the inline icons. We've gone through some of the new features that are included in the product. And one of the things I want to do now is to focus a little bit on some of the reporting. So one of the enhancements, all the reporting that you're used to is still there. You still have all your reports that are still up here. But I'll go ahead into work order tracking to demonstrate this. Okay. So one of the things I'll do is I'll just pull up a, well, let me just show you by demonstration here. So you can see I have a saved query called Priority 1 work orders closed and complete, which I'm pointing at now. But once I'm in an application, this navigation menu, if I don't know the full name and I don't want to go search for it, if I just know a little bit of it, I can also get available queries from that navigation. Like I say, that's one of the things I felt to be really handy in this new release. Well, that returned 81 records, and now what I want to do is to actually create a report, right? So to get ad hoc reporting, I can still use this the same way to create a report. So one of the things that is new here is the ability to do calculations and summaries on ad hoc reports, and I'll demonstrate that for you real quick. So first thing I'll do on this list report is to select the content. So there's going to be a couple of things I don't want. Maybe I don't want the scheduled start date, and I don't want maybe the priority, because I know they're all priority 1 based on my search. I don't really care for the site because I just work on one. So I'm going to remove those fields. And maybe what I really want is I want the actual labor cost, and I want maybe the actual hours. And I'll add those selected fields so they go down here. And now when I preview the report, you'll see that off to the far right side, my actual labor costs and my actual labor hours are there. So let's just say I wanted to add a third column to the far left, which would be an uplift on the actual labor cost. Let's say for some reason I needed to do a 25% increase and have a report that showed a 25% increase on labor costs. So let's just go back and do that. So what I'm going to do now is actually go to calculate, and I'm going to actually, by clicking on labor cost, it'll put it in this expression field. I'll say we want to multiply it times a factor of 1.25 to uplift it 25%. And then I can test my expression, make sure that's working, and then I can name it. Okay, and once I'm satisfied there, I'll add the expression down below, and then I'll preview my report. And in this simple example, I'll get a third column over here to the far right that basically is 25% of this one 2 columns back. Okay, so voila, that seemed to work pretty good. I'll draw your attention up here. I don't have any information up here, and maybe what I want now is a total. Maybe I want to total all of the actual labor costs. So if I go back here, then I can do summarize, and I want to pick my actual labor cost. So click it once, it puts it down in the field. I'll say what function I want to total it. And maybe I also want to total my actual labor hours. Oops. So I'm going to add this one. And then maybe we want to actually total the hours as well. Okay, so now when I preview the report, what you'll see is up at the top, let's see, maybe I didn't add the other one, but here it basically added the actual labor cost, 21,882. So it'll show those at the top. So the basic message here is you've got now calculate and summary, so you can actually perform calculations, and those are all non-persistent, so they don't actually persist in the database. You can't use them other than within the report. But it's a nice capability. It's a nice addition. Yeah, see, I didn't add actual labor hours. If I went ahead and added the value here, then when I previewed the report, I would see two things at the top, not only the total cost, but also the total hours. There you go, 333. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead and cancel out of that. Back to start menu. A couple things just to touch on as we kind of near a wrap up is that they've added now a KPI. There have been a lot of changes to KPIs. So they've added this thing called a KPI template, and a KPI template lets you build parameters around the KPIs that you run. So if you want to be able to not just have it hard-coded with a certain set of parameters or variables going in, you'd be able to create the template, and then once you got into that, be able to create a variety of these different KPIs based on different values. Okay. There's now a KPI viewer that exists. So if you go in there, you actually can see the actual KPIs and the definition. It allows you to view those. There's also been some performance enhancements around the crons associated with KPIs. So you can now schedule a cron task to run a KPI for each KPI. So you might have some that you do weekly that you want to run weekly. You have others that are quarterly KPIs, and you don't want them to run at the same time. So you can actually schedule different crons to execute at different times depending on the frequency that you want. Okay, let's see here. Also, there's been security built around KPIs, so I'll call it something like a subscribe. So certain individuals may have access to certain KPIs and not others. So now all of the security profile that's around other Maximo applications now can be done around KPIs as well. In terms of reporting, there's been a new version of BERT that's coming out that will be shipping with it. It's version 4.3.1. So a new version of BERT comes. And there's other features that are built into the standard reporting in Maximo, so you can cancel a BERT report no matter where it is in its process. So if you've got something that's kind of taking a long time to run and you want to stop it, you certainly can. You can also put timeouts. So if something has gone for more than 5 minutes and hasn't returned, you can kill that report by setting up a limit time on how long you want it to run. And there's also some export options around Excel. So there's some enhanced export options for report. I give you, I think, 3 different varieties of Excel to report, to export. Let me see here. So I'm going to switch, because we haven't got it installed here just yet on our server, but you'll see under Analytics, you'll see Cognos Reporting. So with this release of Maximo, everyone gets an entitlement to Cognos version 10.2. And to show you how that works a little bit, I'll go to a different site. I may have to relog in. Okay, so I'll go ahead and log in. And what you'll see with this is, so with this license of Cognos that will come with your Maximo 7.6, it can be used with Maximo data. It's not to be used outside of a Maximo environment. So the entitlement that you get isn't across, where you can use it against PeopleSoft and SAP and other things that you may have, but you can use it against your Maximo data. So what you'll see in Analytics is when you go to Cognos Reporting, it actually gives you a little warning that says, hey, you can only access it within a valid Maximo session, so it gives you that. Then you'll hear about the BI packs that IBM's releasing. Make that a little bigger. And this is what one of these may look like. So for work orders, go back here. I'll just go into a sample report, and maybe I do work orders by critical assets and look at backlog work orders. So again, this is just a sample. It can get a lot more complex than that. It certainly does. But the message here is that Maximo 7.6 comes with a entitlement to 10.2 of Cognos. Okay? All right. Moving right along. All right. Okay. So now one of the things that IBM has done, and I'll return to the slide deck for this for a second. By the way, everything I've talked about is in or on these bullets, as you can see. So I'm down to about here for multi-tenancy. So if you looked at the evolution of IBM in moving from what was in their version 2 and 3 and even 4 was kind of a single instance of Maximo, which satisfied the needs of a small company. As they grew to an enterprise and supporting what you know in, say, version 5.2 and later, where you had sites, orgs, and sets, now there's even another layer on top of that with Maximo 7.6. It's called multi-tenant. And now there's a couple caveats here that you should be aware of. Is right now it is only supported on installations of Maximo that run DB2. It is not supported for the industry solutions yet, but will in a future release. But there's some decisions that have to take place up front. If you're on DB2, when you install this, there's kind of like no turning back, right? You can't install it without multi-tenancy and then grow to that. You've got to know you want multi-tenancy going in and vice versa. So it's something that if you're setting up an environment where you're going to have multiple tenants, like you're a service provider and you're going to have company X, Y, and Z hit the system and you want to firewall them off completely and have them see different screens and things like that, again, it's another level above org and site that's there. But again, I think this is IBM's move into the cloud with this. So as they have their service engage and they bring people on as software as a service customers, this is certainly a technology that they're going to need to be able to handle multiple tenants within a single environment. Okay. Okay, so a couple other things that I'll just mention. I'll just go back to the first slide here and chat for a minute. So there's been a lot of new platform enhancements. So Maximo now supports Chrome officially. They also support Safari for Mac users. So those browsers are now supported. There's also been some enhanced automation scripting, and the installation process now is based on what they call the Rational Installation Manager, or RIM, R-I-M. So it's going to have the look and feel of other Maximo or of other IBM products that you may have upon installation. It's reported to be simpler and with more progressive disclosure. So as you're installing it, you'll be able to see how you're doing and know more where you're at in the installation process. Okay. A couple other pieces. Put this slide up. So down at the bottom, there's now, with Maximo 7.6, a new definition for limited users. So it used to be that limited users were defined as a common set of 3 applications across your entire enterprise. So for example, an organization might have the rights to go in for limited users to work orders, assets, and inventory. And it would have to be that same set of 3 for all. For if they had 100 limited users, it would be the same for all 100 individuals. So the new definition is those individuals can now pick their 3. So Charlie can have his 3 and Tom can have his 3, and they can be different, as long as they're not system administration. So this doesn't, things like security, users, application designer, the integration stuff, things that you wouldn't want them to access anyway, are excluded from that list of 3 that they can pick from. The other thing that I'll mention is that there's no cost for using Maximo every place. So you will have an entitlement for Maximo every place, which in a connected environment would allow you to access Maximo from your iPhone, any smartphone, or a smart tablet, Android and the like. Now, so what this does is if you have a like an authorized user of Maximo, if you're an authorized user of Maximo and you can use it at your desk, what this does is it entitles you at no additional cost to use it remotely as long as you're connected. right? So you'd be able to access Maximo from your iPhone with no additional license and have all the features that are included with Maximo Every Place. If you have a limited user, you can still use Maximo Every Place, but you can only use it to the extent that you would have access to Maximo at your desk. So it doesn't entitle you to everything. It's just whatever you have access to at your desk, you now have access to on in a connected mobile environment. So it's not, you can't say that if a user doesn't have access to Maximo, this Maximo Every Place does not give them an entitlement to look at it from their iPhone if they don't already have it at their desk. So there was a lot to run through in the time that we had. We've got about 10 minutes. I want to kind of show you a couple of things that are included in the deck that I think would be helpful. One would be different potential upgrade paths. So these are the supported migration paths. I won't go through them in detail, but that's in the deck. You'll also see the different platform support. You'll see which is supported and which platforms have been deprecated. You'll see Chrome on here, and you'll see Safari, as I mentioned. Okay. I've also included a couple of things. One is a link to the actual announcement letter, and then Kim Woodbury at IBM, one of the product managers, has put out a blog where she has been receiving questions on 7.6 for, I'd say, the last month or so, and then she lists the question and puts the answer. So it's kind of an FAQ that I believe would be a good reference for those looking to find out more on Maximo 7.6. Now, Cohesive is planning more Maximo 7.6 web events. Today's session was really an overview, which we just did. And then there'll be a series of these coming up, one on reporting, how to configure hover dialogues and inline icons, and you can kind of see the rest of what's in here. So the message here is stay tuned for more to come from Cohesive on 7.6 and in enabling you to use that product within your environment. Last thing I'll mention on this would be up at the top, you'll see my name in orange, and what that's been set up is that if you roll over that and you wanted to email me a question on 7.6 and get it into our organization, we'd be glad to take a look at your question and respond to that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open up this console, and I'll see if there's any questions in the time that we have. So let me just look at the Gary Cooper. Looks like Gary Cooper had Gary, your line's open.
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yep, can. Go right ahead, Gary.
Hey, great job today. Thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Just a simple question. The navigation is obviously very different from the previous releases of Maximo. What's your overall opinion about the changes and how well, kind of your gut feeling is user adoption and how much education will people need to adapt to the changes?
That's a good question. What I found is I kept, since I've been using 7.5 and we here at Cohesive have been using 7, the 7.1 and 7.5 were very similar. I kept finding myself to go up to the go-to menu back where it was. After about a day or so of using it on a regular basis, kind of preparing for this event, I find myself absolutely loving the search feature, right? So no more was I going to go-to. I just said if I wanted to go to Application Designer, I didn't have to go down and find it and all that. I could just type it in and go there. So I think for me, I can get used to it, and I like it, that aspect of it better. The fact that I can switch back to the way it was means I can have my cake and eat it too. So I can get by with either of them. I particularly like that search feature on the new capability.
Great, thanks.
You bet. Okay. Looks like Char Padilla. Your line's open?
Yes. Hello, Matt.
Hi.
Can you make sure that we have the correct web address where we can go out and get this material that you presented to us today?
Yeah,
I'm not sure I know the web address.
yeah, that'll be sent out. We're recording this, and the presentation, the PowerPoint, will be put up on our website under resources, and you will be able to download it from there. So we'll be sure that everybody on this, once that's posted, probably by close of business Monday, we'll send out an email, and then you'll have all that as a resource for you. Okay?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And just as we go through it, looks like Lisa may have a question. Okay, Lisa Anderson?
Hi, Matt. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Okay. I apologize if I'm asking something you've already covered, but when you were showing the maps earlier,
Yes.
is that now a product of the base Maximo, or is that a spatial feature?
No, it's a product. That's a great question. That's a product of the base. Now, since I was using this for demonstration purposes, I don't have to have a license key for Google or Bing. But if you're using it to make money and you're using this, those Google and Bing as part of a production instance of Maximo, then you go up and you get a license key. It's a paid license key. I don't have the pricing on it. But for demonstration purposes, you can do it for free. But yes, it is absolutely part of base. And that looks like it clears up all the questions that we had. One more sweep. So again, I thank you for joining today's session on Maximo 7.6. We're very excited about this new release and think you will be too. So I encourage you to go to the Passport Advantage site if you're under a maintenance agreement, download it, get it in a sandbox, and at least become familiar with it, even if you have no immediate plans to upgrade to it. If you're going to Maximo 7.6 and you need any help or have any questions, feel free to reach out to Cohesive, and I'll include my name and number in a follow-up email to all those that have participated in this event. That concludes today's event. Again, thank you for joining us. Bye now.